Hello and welcome to Elvenhome, and to this video which I was concentrating on me renumbering a Farish 82 from the way in which it comes, which is as Bachelors Button 60537 into Blue Peter 60532. As I said in the last video, I am going to want to be able to run more than one locomotive of a class on the layout. And sometimes you can actually buy 2 or 3 of a class with different running numbers, and they'll all be right for the period. Remembering that the period I'm really modelling is sort of just after nationalisation, roughly-ish. So I can have Big 4 livery, because not all trains were immediately repainted, and I can also have British Rail with the early crest. But very often what you'll find is that Farish and Dapol to some extent will produce an early crest livery for a class, but perhaps only one, and so you're going to have to be able to go in and renumber them. And I had to build myself up to actually attack these beautiful models, because they are beautiful models, to take off the existing running number and put on a new one. Now, I showed you in the last one that I bought some etch plates for Bachelors Button and put those on, which I think made a big difference. And now I'm actually going to get on and do the renumbering of the newer engine that I bought to turn it into Blue Peter. As I mentioned in the last video, I'm conscious that actually Blue Peter has other differences from Bachelors Button. They're not entirely the same. Blue Peter has a double chimney. There are other parts of the rodding around the engine, and I think there's some stuff around the smoke box door which is different. But for me, this is an exercise in being able actually to take the existing numbers off the engine and put new ones on, and it to come out not looking too horrible. For those of you that aren't familiar with the British N scale, which is 1 to 148, or in a rather odd way 2 millimeters to the foot, I've put a ruler in front of everything so you can get an idea of the size of the things that we're working with. And if I come in and move around here just to there, you will see the etch plates waiting to be put onto the side of the engine. The blue plate is obviously Blue Peter. Can I get any closer? No, I can't. It really doesn't like that. The centerpiece is Blue Peter, that's the etch plate. Just below that is a smoke box door number, and in fact I've already fitted that to the engine. And then in the top right of that little box is the plate that says where the engine was built, which is for the cab side door. If I come out just a little bit and go up, you will see, seeing as I've said this is a video showing me changing the number, that I appear to have completed this, and that this would therefore be a very short video. But no, you don't get off that lightly. What I've done is I have completed taking the number off and fitting the new numbers on one side. And what this video is going to be is me going through the whole process again for the other side. If I just stand this up a little bit more, I'm really quite pleased with that. I'm conscious that right at the last moment, as I was drying things, as the water wicked away from underneath the transfers, the decals, I hadn't noticed that 6 had dropped, which is so annoying. However, never mind. But as you can see, if I put the two together, we now have 60532 and 60537. And it was quite a traumatic experience attacking this thing with the T-cut, which I shall be doing shortly. And I'll talk you through each stage, and I'll leave the video running, and then when I come to do the editing I'll speed it up in the usual way so that you're not sitting here. It took me a long time to do this. The transfers are very, very small. I think if I can pick these up just and bring them into camera and get them to focus, there we go. You can see how small the numbers are because you can see my thumb by them, and we're getting to go in the right direction is quite tricky. However, it can be done, and I'm hoping when I do the other side I'll do it better than I've done this one. So I'll come back in a moment once I've reset things up. You're going to be looking at things from the side because I simply can't work around this camera. So I'll come back to you in just a moment, and we'll start on the other side of the engine. Okay, well, as you can see, I've turned the engine round so that we're working on the opposite side now. And the things that we've got to do is we've got to remove this here, which I think is a decal. It comes off, the more important thing, which is the current name plate, though it's obviously printed. We remove all the numbers. You may remember I said in the last video, everything I've seen has told me to remove all the numbers because it's quite difficult when you buy new numbers to get them so they match entirely, and in fact these numbers don't, though I think if anything actually they look better, the Fox transfers which I bought, and I'll put a link below to Fox transfers generally, not just to the ones that I bought. We need to take off this shed plate, which is also a decal, because we're going to put the other shed plate on. And to do that, we use this beast of a thing called T-cut, which is a scratch remover generally used, as many of you will know, on cars to take out minor scratches on paintwork. And with the use of a Q-tip, we gently keep rubbing until these come away. Hooray! So that's what I'm going to start doing now. And whilst I'm gently rubbing and removing this, which could take me a little while, I'll find something soothing for you to listen to while I'm working away. So speak to you again in a moment. Okay, I think you can see that the T-cut has indeed removed the numbers. It's gone. They're completely gone from there. It's also taken the paint off the handrails here a little bit, which I made the mistake of doing on the other side. But always have some handy black enamel paint. So I will touch that up gently when everything's finished. So the next thing to do, and this is the harder one that I found, is to get the nameplate off here. That really doesn't like giving up the ghost, so I'll come back when I've finally beaten that end of the locomotive as well. Okay, I think if I can't bring this too close to the camera because I think it will not focus, but you can see that the majority of Benjamin's Bachelors Button has gone. Not all of it, because as I discovered when I did this last time, as I get up to the top here, this runs underneath a handrail that runs all the way around the smoke deflector, and the teacup will take the paint off of that as soon as you look at it. But what I also realised is that when I put the new nameplate for Blue Peter on, I can cover that end with the nameplate. But what I couldn't cover, obviously, is the bit that was sticking out behind. So I think we will be all right there. So the next thing to do, which is fairly straightforward, is to fit the nameplate, which I will do. I can get the camera, there we go. There's the nameplate, which I'll cut out and then fit that on. And then we will start the fun of putting on the new numbers. So back in just a moment. Well, it at least now has its nameplates on both sides. I'd mentioned I'd already changed the number on the smokebox door, and if that's showing well enough, let's have a look this way. Well done. On here, if I can get this to focus. That's an easy job because you just stick that straight over the transfer that's there already. The harder thing to do now, which we now must gird ourselves to do, is the numbers on the side. The water has a drop, is warm, actually quite hot, but not boiling, it's not from a kettle. And there's a drop of washing up liquid in it because Fox Transfers advise that a modified chemistry, we now recommend that you add a drop of washing up liquid to the water, which we advise to be hot but not boiling. The thing I discovered also is I had a little dish initially, and I've gone now for a rather small, fairly shallow plate. Once you put the decals in, especially at N-gauge, they're very small. And the dish, it was the devil's own job to get them out, and on a number of occasions, by the time I got them out, the decal had slid off and I had little numbers floating around at the bottom of the dish, which again, when you tried to pick them out, wrapped themselves around the blade of the knife. So, the first number that we're going to put on is the number in the centre, because once you've centred that number, you can then work outwards from it to line everything up. So, we need to put in the number 5. Which I have here somewhere, a number 5, there we go. And the thing I found with the Fox Transfers, these come with a line below them, which is obviously fairly useful for some numbers to know which way up they are, the 9 and the 6 particularly. But the yellow line is part of the decal, and if you don't cut it off, when the decal slides off onto the side of the cab, you've got a yellow line, which of course will not marry up with any other yellow line that you've got on the side of things. So I'm just going to trim this down to get rid of that line. Jolly good. And then we will drop number 5 into the water. There she goes. Give it a minute or two to do its thing. No rhyme or reason to know how long it will take for it to start lifting. Some are much quicker than others. And then gently pick it up. Which is easier said than done. I can see this is actually coming off. It's coming off in the water below. So if I pick this up. Oh, and that is exactly what it's done. I don't know if I'm going to get away with this. It's completely wrapped itself around. blade of this knife, but it is a whole number. Hold steady. Okay, well I don't know if you can, how well you can see that. I left that running, and I will include that bit just to give you an idea of how tricky this is. That number came off the paper backing, and the paper backing is still in the water, really very fast, and then wrapped itself round the blade of the knife. But gently we managed to get it off, and I think, as you can see, can I come in a bit closer and get it to focus? I don't know whether it will. No, it really doesn't like that. I'll come back out again. It is there. The first number is there. Hooray. So from that we can now work on the numbers going either side, which I will now proceed to do. Okay, well, we appear to have all the numbers on. The last thing I'm going to do, which I did before, and I saw from something that I was watching on, let's get this come out, is to use this micro set, which apparently helps the decal now to bind onto the side, it says here. So we just dab it on gently, so as not to lift them. A bit more. Okay, and that should help it grab to the side of the cab side. And now we will gently remove this paper, very gently, because there's water there which needs to be got off, for which actually one of these cotton buds is quite good for doing that. It's amazing, you get actually to lift off the water, it virtually does it by capillary action. Oh no, disaster. That's what comes of talking and doing things at the same time. Okay, disaster averted. I'm just going to leave that to dry a little bit, and then I will damp it gently with to get rid of the final bit of water. Blimey, it's rather scary. Let's come in. And there, if I move this around so you can see it, is our new number. Be interested to see how long this takes when I look back. So, what I've got to do now is clean up a bit, put that shed plate, not shed plate, works plate on the side, down the bottom there, and then give it a coat of matte varnish just to dull it down a little, because one of the things the teacup does is it polishes the side of the locomotive, which is what it does with a car, of course, to remove the scratch. So I'll just have a bit of a tidy up, and then I'll come back once I've done those other things. See you in just a moment. Oh, well, there you are, finished. In case you were wondering whether I had the most incredible eyesight, the answer is no. I use one of these things, which is a magnifying light, which actually I think we bought for my wife to do her needlework by when she did needlework, but has now been repurposed for me, and this is an invaluable piece of kit, particularly as it has a daylight bulb in it, which allows the colours underneath to react more naturally than tungsten light. So let's get that out of the way now. And so if I come in here, and I'll move the engine round a bit, it's been reunited with its tender, and you'll see, I think, on there that it has its correct running number, 60532, Blue Peter. It's not perfect by any means, I don't pretend it is. This was my first attempt at doing this, and I did it better the second time than I did the first, even with the disaster of attending all the numbers going skew-whiff right at the end there. And I'm sure I'll do it much better when I do it again, but I thought it's useful, and part of the reason I do these videos is to show people that you can do all this stuff. You just have to put yourself to give it a go. So we'll see what that looks like once it all calms down. I think it's pretty much dried, and I'll put it on the layout, and we'll have some shots at the end of the two A2s in full cry around the layout. Thanks very much for watching, and if you've liked this video, please do like it. It all helps, and share it indeed. If you haven't subscribed to me, please subscribe and hit the bell notification so you know when I'm uploading, and it really will be good to have you along. And until I speak to you next time, goodbye from Elvenhome. Bye bye.